Major storm heading for the Great Lakes, and it's going to have already is having impact. In fact, everywhere east of the Rockies is feeling going to be feeling the effects of this, either directly or indirectly. We have blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, high wind warnings, wind advisories, flood watches, lake flood warnings. That's over near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and wind chill advisories, and it goes on and on. The list is endless. And this show won't be endless because eventually it does come to an end when we're done. The Joe and Joe Weather Show, straight ahead, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County. And if there's a flash freeze, you're going to need rock salt. They are Long Island's largest rock salt source. So let them know. And if you can't find it where you are and you're not on Long Island, that's okay. You can go there and get it at Omni, along with all the great snow and ice melt products, snow blowers, shovels, spreaders, all kinds of supplies that you might need to get you through this winter. 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find better prices. And, of course, we all know too well that the website is
a very easy one, Joe. OmniTrueValue.com. www.omnitruevalue.com. Nobody uses www anymore.
Nobody uses www anymore. No. It's gone the way of the flip phone and the antenna radio, television, and that sort of thing. What you got? To be freezing. Yeah. Yes.
Happy birthday. I figured since it's going to get very cold, not tomorrow, but on Friday, I would wear something rather appropriate. And this was about as appropriate as I could find. Actually, it's an early Christmas gift. Renata gave it to me, and she said, I want you to wear this on your next show. So here it is. Just to make her happy again. There he is, old Frosty. And we'll see how this all pans out. And this morning, I sent to you the thing that really blew me away right off the bat this 21st of December, this first day of winter, were the Foose values showing just how sharp a drop.
Yes, that was impressive.
In terms of the thicknesses and in terms of the lowest level of the atmosphere, how sharp the drop is going to be in temperature overall during the latter part of the day on Friday. And if this was not going to provide a flash freeze, I don't know what can. It was incredible, Joe.
Yeah, the only thing, and I'm probably less concerned from it from a forecast standpoint, if you're sure or not sure. Flash freezes are tricky, especially when there's a wind, because it stops raining. You get a couple of hours of dry conditions before the temperatures go below freezing, especially if there's a wind, and a lot of the moisture will tend to evaporate. This one's really close. I mean, a lot of the models have the back edge of the rain moving across New York City and Long Island, say, for example, between 1 and 2 o'clock. And then about 2 hours later, 2 or 3 hours later, the temperature goes below 32. And a couple hours after that, it's down to about 25. I'm thinking that there's probably going to be some slick spots around at the very least, and maybe, as you said yesterday, some secondary roads, even some primary roads might get slick. We're not going to know till Friday morning in terms of what the radar looks like. Maybe there's even a stick of a narrow band of heavy snow that lasts for about 10 minutes when the cold air comes rushing in as the front goes by on the backside. That's another variable that some models have something, others don't. So it's all part of the the big puzzle that we're going to have to put together here. But this storm is having impacts. Joe, you talk about big drops. The temperature at Denver this afternoon at 5 o'clock Eastern time was 42. This was at the airport. So it was 42 at 5 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, it was 7.
Ow. Now there, ladies and gentlemen, is a flash freeze.
That's a 35-degree temperature drop. That's literally almost a degree every 2 minutes. Well, it's a little bit more than a degree every 2 minutes.
Now wait a minute. Now, what did you say? It started out at
42 at 5 o'clock.
42, and
at 6 o'clock it was 7. That's just crazy. I mean, we're not going to see dramatic temperature drops, not quite like that. We're going to see probably 25 to 30 degree temperature drops over the course of, say, 5 or 6 hours.
That's 1 degree every one. That's 1 degree going down 1 degree every 1.7 minutes.
Yeah,
every 1.7 minutes.
You've got this big storm. You've got this Arctic boundary that's dropping down through the plains. That's going to go all the way down, bringing cold air down to the Gulf Coast. I mean, it is just really from a weather standpoint, it's actually quite amazing and quite astounding. So we're going to get into all of that. I just want to go through real quick some super chat hits that we have already. David Fuller, thank you, David. And he says, a chance of losing power. I'll tell you, with the wind being an issue both ahead of the system and behind it, I'm sure there are probably going to be some power outages from somebody somewhere, I would think. Jonathan Strine, welcome to our YouTube channel, because I think that's a new name here I don't recognize. And yes, here's the next few days of wild weather. No, absolutely. And in some places, like really crazy. We're going to talk about Buffalo again. Ken Musillo hitting super chat. And Jacqueline, where is she? She hit before the show started, and I had it on my screen, and my screen now erased it. Jacqueline Baxter hit super chat earlier in the show. Thank you very much. By the way, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. I'm Joe Cioffi. That's Joe Rayo on my right. And we've been together attached at the hip on and off for the last 40 some odd years, both professionally and personally. We have our show 5 days a week, Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. Slight change in schedule, folks. We will be on this Friday. So we will be on this Friday at 7:35. We will not be on Sunday, Christmas Day. And since the weather is going to be quiet much of next week, there's a hint of the long range. Joe and I are going to take Boxing Day off too. So we will be back on, because that's the day that the help gets their gifts, essentially. And we're the help. So Tuesday, we will be back Tuesday at 7:35. So mark your schedules down.
You know what Tuesday is? Tuesday is a special day around here.
Tuesday, St. Stephen's Day, but no, I don't know. What's Tuesday?
Tuesday is the lovely Mrs. Rayo's birthday.
Oh. Well, I think it's my grandson. It's also my grandson's the 28th, 27th or 28th. If
it was the same day as Renata's birthday, maybe we would have your grandson and Renata do the show on Tuesday. That would be interesting. Oh. That'll bring a lot of people to see. I think, and quite frankly, I think people would probably prefer to see Renata as opposed to either you or me. But that's my own personal opinion. I want to just note, because David Filler mentioned this with his super chat hit about the possibility of losing power. And on my Facebook page today, I had a post from Neil Doherty, saying, "Hey Joe, it was either 2 or 3 Christmas Eves ago that we had a big rainstorm with almost half of Rockland County losing power, and most likely many other places in the Hudson Valley. That was the storm that wiped out or erased the 10+ inches of snow that had fallen on December 15th, and that was heavy rain, strong winds, fog, and whatever. And the wind, of course, knocking out power, as he points out, to half of Rockland County, most likely many other places in the Hudson Valley. And a lot of people had to make changes for Christmas dinner. I have a feeling," he says, "that on Friday we may see something similar. The only difference was that on that Christmas, it was very mild. So when people lost their power, it wasn't as bad as compared to this upcoming weekend, where it is going to be frigid." Yes, if you lose your power, let's say late Thursday night or early Friday morning, if you don't get that power back by Friday afternoon, you're going to have a problem, because it is going to turn very cold very fast. And hopefully not too many of you, and hopefully nobody, will lose power on Friday or Thursday night. But I did mention in a statement on my Facebook page, Joe, from midnight Thursday night to right around dawn on Friday, that's when it's going to be the heaviest in terms of the wind and in terms of the rain, and maybe even some lightning and thunder as well. And in fact, SPC has us on their convective outlook on Friday with a chance of seeing a little bit of general thunderstorm activity.
Couple of super chat hits. We have Mardux427. Thank you for the super chat hit. And he says, just praying to get some snow in northwest Georgia. Well, I'm sitting here in northeast Georgia, and I'm also hoping. And I think we'll probably get something, although it might only be enough to whiten the ground or maybe a little bit more. But we'll know tomorrow night. And Howard A. Hitting a super chat. Thank you, Howard. So happy holidays, Joe and Joe. Appreciate all the detailed weather information you both provide throughout the year. Thank you very much. And I just going to address one comment before we, and then go on to the weather that's going on, and that's by James Davidson, who says, I guess he's talking to Keith James. If you notice, we do keep getting the same pattern every single winter season for the past so many years now. Same thing every winter season, which is the new normal. No surprise anymore. James, I'm going to tell you quite honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. The patterns have actually been very different every single winter for the last, I don't know how many years, except for maybe 13, 14, and 14, 15. Those two blockbuster winter years are back to back. The rest of the time, every year it's different. It's just that there are probably more patterns that are unfavorable for cold and snow than there are favorable for cold and snow. So you just seem to be, you're kind of focusing on it in terms of in a general way, but technically the patterns this winter is a hell of a lot different than it was last winter, and it was a hell of a lot different than it was the winter before or the winter before that. Just want to point that out. And on that,
I got kind of angry about the fact that the CBS Evening News, Major Garrett filling in tonight for Nora O'Donnell, leading off the news tonight with a once in a generational storm. And I got angry because I said I could choose 3 or 4 or 5 different storms in my memory that certainly is going to be a lot worse than what I mean, not to downplay this. This is a fairly significant storm, but I could think of a lot worse storm scenarios. But then Renata chimed in and said, listen to what he said, a once in a generation storm. How long is a generation? I said, I don't know, 20, 25 years. He said, well, he's talking about storms that have happened going back to, let's say, 2005 or 2000. He's not talking about your storms that you're thinking of from the 1970s and 1960s or whatever. That's multi-generational storm. And that kind of tempered me. That kind of soothed me down.
Well, and also for some areas, this storm probably will be a generational event, and for other areas, it won't be. So it does depend on where you're coming from and your perspective. But we do tend to have storms of the century. I would say probably every other week.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I just started when I was yelling. I was actually yelling at the TV screen, saying, "Have you gone so low now in order to get ratings that you need to scare people and you need to get?" And I think my explanation here is, yes, and you're absolutely right, Joe. Maybe for some areas of the country, this is going to be a generational type storm. But for us here, for example, in New York City and the tri-state area, this is just going to be one big badass rain and windstorm, followed by a sweep of much colder air. And we've gone through this many, many, many times in the last decade or in the last 20 years. So really, for us, it's not generational, and it's a national news item. This is not local news. So when you say that,
yes, you're right. When you say that, it implies that it applies to everybody. When they say it, I get it.
Right.
I get it. No, I know. That's why I don't watch it. This way, if you don't watch, Joe, you can't get upset.
Right. Okay.
All right. Let's do the watches and warns. We got a lot to talk about here, so I think the best way to do this is probably, why don't we go section by section, and then this way we can cover every area thoroughly. So we'll start with the Northeast, where we have a plethora advisories and warnings and watches. Starting in northernmost Maine, we have high wind warnings, and those actually extend down into southeastern New England, across New Hampshire, Vermont, and into northeastern New York. We have now talk about getting a foot of snow and having it washed away. The folks in Maine are about to experience that because they've got flood watches up for a good portion of the state as well, and that extends for most of New Hampshire. Wind advisories for the areas in Massachusetts that are not under a high wind warning. We also have that high wind warning, I believe, is also for Rhode Island, if my eyes are not tricking me. Wind advisories for Connecticut, Long Island, and the Hudson Valley east of the Hudson River. Flood watches in western New Jersey, parts of eastern and southeastern Pennsylvania. We have a slew of coastal flood advisories and coastal flood watches because there will be moderate to, in some cases, major coastal flooding at the high tide on Friday morning. And that also extends, some coastal advisories extend down into Delaware. And that takes care of the Northeast. The big deal, I think, for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England is going to be, well, particularly near the coast, it's going to be the wind. You go inland, there's going to be wind there too. There we're dealing with issues of rain. Looks like we'll probably get anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain out of this. And then, of course, there's the potential for a flash freeze. And that is the dicey part of the forecast, both that forecast itself and the fact that we're trying to figure out how that's going to play out.
I don't remember the exact date of the last time here in where I live, here in Putnam Valley, we had a flash freeze. I can tell you that it was when my kids were being driven by the local school bus driver who decided to come up my driveway, turn around, and in the process of doing that, she knocked off a couple of bricks that Belgian blocks that I have along one side of my driveway, and then she was on my driveway and couldn't go down the road, the local road that we live off of, because everything had just frozen up solid. And this was all within a span of like 5 or 10 minutes that the temperatures were dropping, and it was just. But I'm thinking that this may have been. Well, I moved up here 20 years ago, so it may have been something like 10, maybe 15 years ago where we had this very dramatic flash freeze. And I'm not sure if what we're going to see on Friday is going to be the equivalent of that. But, a lot of things still have to fall into place. One of the things is, does the cold air that comes ramming in here Friday afternoon turn everything off, Joe? Turn the precipitation off? Or do we end up with getting a changeover to snow? I did notice on the Canadian model had a very dark, narrow band of snow right along the front, which ended just to my north.
All right, let me get the Canadian model up here. Hold on a second. So there we go. So let's put the Canadian model up so people can see what you're speaking of, and I'll get myself out of the way.
Jacqueline Baxter, I just read on the chat board that you're a retired school bus driver, and that's a no-no. You can't pull into the driveway. But this was desperation on the part of the woman who was driving that school bus, because where I am, I'm located on a hill, roughly 30-degree inclination, and so this poor woman driving these kids on a bus and realizing that she wasn't able to get traction on the road because it was freezing up fast and had to do something. So that's why she pulled into my driveway. So I don't fault her. I do fault. I was a little peeved about the fact that she knocked a couple of my Belgian blocks off, because it was a quick turn and spin and like that. But it was a terrible time for her in doing that. So maybe it was against regulations, but it was the only thing that she could have done. Save sliding all the way down the hill and getting into a major accident. So anyway, I see you have the Canadian model up, Joe.
Right.
And there, you see that? That band of very dark blue. Now I'm wondering what the heck is that? Is that
Well,
like a
that's
snow squall line, or
it might be some kind of line. There's a secondary front in here, by the way, and that could be a snow squall line. But let me see if I can do. Let me see if I can pull this off. Sometimes I get these by accident. I'm going to go to the NAM 3 first, and now I'll switch back to the Canadian. Nah, it didn't work. I was trying to get. This is not the radar. This is this is total precip. So it at least implies that you got at least the light blue snow comes all the way down into northern New Jersey and touching Long Island, which would imply that sometime between between 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday and 7 o'clock in the afternoon that there's going to be some kind of snow shower, or some leftover precip that goes over to snow for a very short period of time. The thing is, if that happens, you got to think that the ground temperatures are going to be plummeting so that it'll probably stick and that you wind up with a coating. That scenario to me would probably support the notion of a flash freeze that would make things maybe slightly worse, because then you're putting a coating of snow into the mix and all of this, and that's going to whiten up the ground, and then you really will have a skating rink. But again, is it there? Is it not there? And you look at the GFS. And here's the thing. The other thing I was struggling with, if you look at the GFS, for example, because here I can do it. So the GFS actually also has, that dark blue stripe on the GFS goes all the way down through Delaware and into Maryland, which I thought was unusual. And if you switch to the radar version of this, now there's 6 hours missing here, Joe. I don't know what goes on in the 6 hours between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. Okay,
right?
does that snow magically appear as the cold air rushes in and lasts for a couple of hours, and then by the time we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the front is past eastern Long Island, that most of that snow is gone? I don't know. We could look at the HRRR and see what the afternoon HRRR won't take us out. They'll take us out to 1 o'clock in the afternoon at least. So let's see what this does. So this one has like a squall line. Look at that. It's got a squall line of thunderstorms coming through this is at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, and 1 p.m. So this actually does change it over to snow, although the area kind of falls apart a bit. And it's also the HRRR, which I vowed back a few weeks ago not to even bother to use, but since I'm desperate here, I figured let's take a look at it. So that's a big question here. The other thing that's a bit more in the way of certitude is the fact that the pressure gradient gets very tight Thursday night into Friday morning as this area of rain that comes up from the Carolinas. And by the way, it also will start as snow and sleet in northwestern Virginia, northeastern West Virginia, western Maryland, and central Pennsylvania, where they've got some areas have winter weather advisories or even winter storm warnings. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in context with everything else. But the gradient gets very tight, and in this rain band, there's probably going to be some thunderstorms in the mix and put down maybe a couple of inches of rain. So this is now at 7 a.m. That first batch is going to go out. There's going to be a break for a couple of hours, and then the real front comes through. I wouldn't be surprised, Joe, if we do wind up with that front coming through with a thunderstorm or two in there.
Actually, I said that my feelings were that it wasn't the cold front. I thought it was the warm front. That or maybe the warm front would have wave.
You might get it with the warm front and the cold front.
It's yes, as Muskie on Deputy Dog would say, it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible. Oh God. I wanted to get the 10-meter wind. Let's see if we could do that. So let's look at the 10-meter wind here, and usually with these maps, with these models, it doesn't always pick it up on land. But these are sustained winds and not gusts. So you can see, at least along the ocean front, that you got gales there in the yellow and in the orange. Those are 40-knot sustained winds into Friday morning. And there's a big impulse there that heads into southeastern New England, which is why they probably got the high wind warning. And then, of course, once the front goes by, the gradient is just as tight or even tighter behind it, and you're going to blow away with the west northwest wind and the cold air that's going to be coming in on those west northwest winds.
Look at Lake Erie and
Oh,
Ontario.
yeah. Well, now let's talk about Buffalo, because in their discussion they addressed the fact that they're going to be very close to that 968 low that's sitting up north of Lake Huron. If you're talking about a tight gradient here, it's super tight there, and the winds, they're talking about winds past hurricane force in western New York. Along with the lake effect snows that are going on. So that is a little different than what they had with the big event from a few weeks ago, from back in November. It's more than
Right.
a few weeks ago. They got to struggle here in terms of figuring out the forecast because of the wind speed, the wind direction. That's going to lead to all sorts of impacts. You're going to put 70 mile an hour winds on top of 3 feet of snow. In that lake effect, 2 or 3 feet of snow, you know what that's going to do. I mean, talk about I'd rather have if you're going to get, I'd rather have 5 feet of snow with little or no wind than 2 feet of snow and a screaming 70 mile an hour wind and gusts, gusts that are above hurricane force.
Yes, the dreaded horizontal snow, as opposed to just the snow that comes straight down.
Oh yeah, no, this is nuts. I mean, pretty much, I don't know how else to describe it. But yeah, I mean, this front is this storm itself, the front that goes with it, the cold air that extends to the south. I mean, you can see the cold front and the line is with the showers that run from western New York. This is a Friday morning, all the way down off the East Coast, crosses South Florida, extends down into the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, this is just a big system. And look at the gradient across the Great Lakes and back over into the northern plains, across through the Ohio Valley, the southeast. It's huge. I mean, this really is a huge system.
This is and we were talking about this yesterday, that there may actually be several hours of quiet weather, let's say Friday morning. And who knows, maybe the clouds will thin out enough for a little bit of sunshine before the actual cold front comes ramming through here at midday, early at the. I tell you, you get sunshine, and the temperatures, the warmest temperatures are probably going to be before noontime. I said to myself, I'm going to play conservative, low to mid 50s. It could very easily go to the upper 50s. And if you get a little sunshine, even just a small bit, bang, all of a sudden you find yourself in the 60s. And if that cold front comes through on schedule, there's going to be lightning and thunder, no question about that.
So I actually saved these maps. I pulled up 3 maps off the digital weather service digital weather. So these are the temperatures at 7 a.m. on Friday. So just to pick up a couple of points. New York City is at 53. Philadelphia is at 52. Scranton is at 50, and let's say Baltimore is at 52. Now let's jump to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. New York City at 1 o'clock in the afternoon is at 43, so 9 degrees down. Scranton's at 34, down 16 degrees. And Baltimore is down to 33, which I think I forgot what I said Baltimore was, but I'm going to say it was a 20-degree change. I mean, that's huge. And then let's go to 7 p.m. So let's put up the 7 p.m. map. And now New York City is 24, okay? And Scranton is 16, and Philadelphia 21, and Baltimore is at 22. I mean, this is huge. I mean, these are big temperature changes, and again, it's very important that we figure out when the precip ends and when the temperature goes below 32. I mean, in my estimation, we're talking about literally maybe a couple of hours. I mean, that's how fast these temperatures are dropping. So I got to think that there's going to I don't think 2 hours of wind and of dry conditions and wind are going to be enough to dry off surfaces. Maybe they'll dry off some surfaces, but places that are protected and protected uh, probably are going to dry off much slower, and those areas are going to ice up. And again, that question of whether there's going to be a little band of snow behind it to put a coating on the ground on top of everything else.
And there's nothing that the local highway departments can do in this type of situation, because they certainly cannot brine the roads or put anything down on the roads, because it's all going to get washed away by all of the heavy rains that'll be falling Thursday night into the early part of Friday. And unless they're quick, and say, okay, guys, we got a little bit of a break, let's get on out there. Unless they do something then, but even then, I don't think they would do much, because many of the roadways will still be rather wet. So you're still going to have to deal with the drop in temperature and the potential for patchy or icy glaze on some of the roadways, especially the secondary ones and the entrance and exit ramps come Friday evening. So not a very pleasant picture. And it's sad too, Joe, because it's the day before, the night before Christmas Eve. People are going every which way trying to get out and trying to get to wherever they want to go. The airports, for example. And don't forget, being the Friday night before Christmas Eve, I'm sure there are going to be not a few Christmas get-togethers, Christmas parties that have been long set up in advance for people to get together. So it's not going to be a fun. If you have to go out on Friday night, please be extra careful, because of the situation that will evolve during the afternoon and evening, with the wind, with the leftover rain, the changeover possibly to a little snow, the icing on some of the roadways. It's not going to be a very pretty picture on Friday night.
And these are the winds, by the way. I did the same thing with the winds, and I also had to put the wind barbs up. So in the morning, 7 a.m. with a southeast or a south-southeast wind, we've got wind gusts from New York City east, all in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range. But even gusts inland are going to be well up into the 30s and even lower 40s as you go to the west. And then at 1 o'clock, as you start to get to those wind shifts and they start going around to the northwest, you'll notice the winds from New York City east all go south and almost straight south and gusting to 40 plus. And they're still south and southwest now down in Delaware. So you're actually getting cold air that's coming from the southwest for the first push of dropping temperatures that takes it down into the upper 30s and low 40s by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So and the gusts inland are also running in the 30s to low 40s. You see low 40s, and then of course the southeastern New England, you got gusts up over 50 being forecasted there. And then when we go to 7 o'clock, the winds everywhere at that point should be pretty much westerly. They're actually even a bit west-southwest. And you're seeing winds that are 40 miles an hour or higher from Long Island east, and still gusting through the 30s inland, and then they pick up again when you go to central Pennsylvania with gusts picking up into the 40s. So this is a long duration a long duration wind event, because those winds are going to stay strong starting Thursday night and probably lasting through much of Saturday into Saturday night.
Is that hotel out there in south and east of Long Island with a wind gust of 55?
That might be Ship Hotel, yes.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
maybe it's the one that's got the 49 to the west of it. I don't know which one.
Either way, I don't want to stay at that hotel at night.
No, you don't. No, you certainly don't. All right, let's go back to the warnings map so we can cover what's going on and the issues in western New York. And we talked about some of that with Buffalo. They've got winter storm watches up. They actually put these up yesterday, and I want to go to the Buffalo Weather Service office. I want to see what they're doing with respect to snowfall. So we'll pick up their snowfall forecast map there, and they're going. So this is through Sunday morning. This is Christmas Day through 7 a.m. So from a snow standpoint, this is not nearly anything close to what they had with the Epic event, but still anywhere from a foot to forecasting 21.4 for Buffalo itself, Dunkirk 18.7, Lockport 12.6, 3.1 for Rochester, and then you go up into northeastern New York with 18.6 at Watertown, 13.4 for Clayton. But back to the whole Buffalo area, a foot and a half of snow, again, with winds gusting past 70 miles an hour. That is not going to be fun by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Now, for all of you people out there saying, "Yeah, I wish it would snow on Christmas morning. I wish it would snow," believe me, in Buffalo, they're not wishing this. This is like Christmas overdone, so to speak. And yeah, the only thing that's funny about that, Joe, when I saw that snow map, is what? Where are the 50 and 60-inch areas? Because that's what they had in November.
I know.
And you know, after going through that mayhem, maybe, just maybe, 21.6, people in Buffalo are probably saying, "Oh, that's only 21 inches. We could take care of that."
Well, here's the other side going further west. So Erie, 12 to 15 in Erie, and now in Ohio, Ashtabula at 10 to 12, Mentor and Chardon at 6 to 8, Cleveland itself 4.6. Looking around Akron 3.4. Further west, Toledo 4 to 6 there. Sandusky 3 to 4. Bowling Green 3 to 4. So again, the heaviest will be in northeastern Ohio, northwest Pennsylvania, and in southwestern New York, all the way up to about Buffalo. Again, not going to be a fun time for that part of the world. Now, the rest of the let's do some more of these because there's a lot. And now we'll go south and into western Pennsylvania where we have winter weather advisories. And wait, there's two sets of colors here. They got a darker blue and a lighter blue. All right, so the winter weather advisory. Then for Pittsburgh, they've got the lighter blue, which is a winter storm watch. Am I reading that right? Hold on. Let me pull up the
All you have to do is just.
no,
All you have to do is just.
that's a wind chill advisory.
Okay.
So they got wind chill advisories there. They do have a handful of counties in Ohio under a winter storm watch, along with the winter storm warnings in the counties as you go further north. And you have winter weather advisories on either side. Winter storm warnings in western Maryland, northeastern West Virginia, and I think maybe still a couple of counties in northwestern Virginia. For the lead precip that's coming up the coast for Thursday, where the cold air is getting wedged east of the Appalachians, and it's getting wedged in that area there in northwestern Virginia, and even as far south as western North Carolina. They've got winter weather advisories up for the lead precip that is coming on through. Also, winter storm warnings for much of southeastern Michigan, blizzard warnings on the west shores and in northern Michigan. We have blizzard warnings also for much of northern Iowa, southern, let's say south and southeastern Minnesota. And then there's a gap, and then they've got blizzard warnings for north central and northwestern South Dakota and portions of southwest North Dakota and southeast Montana. They just had we just went through with them last week where they had blizzard warnings up for 4 days. All the light blue, those are all the bluish colors, the various light blue colors, let's put it that way, are all either wind chill advisories or wind chill watches or anything else that they could come up with to represent how cold it's going to be. So that covers that area. And what are these up in Arkansas? Hold on, there's some. What's that? Oh, those are winter weather advisories that they have up for Little Rock, back over to Fort Smith. This narrow band that cuts right across the middle part of the state is under a winter weather advisory, and it's for dangerously cold wind chills are expected. For the winter weather advisory, the primary potential impact is for the potential of a fairly widespread flash freeze. So they're going for a flash freeze down there.
Right.
And the folks in central Arkansas. So, and then of course, you still have this storm moving its way through the Front Range, which is why we're seeing winter storm warnings in northwestern Colorado, southwestern Wyoming, and again, very impressive. And also, let's not forget just to bring this up one more time, the flood watches that are up here for what could be anywhere from an inch and a half to, in some places, possibly as much as 3 inches of rain, and very very impressive system in terms of the warnings coverage and its various impacts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that map, and it looks like this one singular system, this one singular storm system, has at least 75 to 80% of the country underneath some kind of a weather advisory or warning or watch. It's incredible.
Yes, and next week we'll make up for it in the other direction. Well, we're probably going to have a stretch of days when there probably won't be hardly any watches or warnings up.
Right. There'll be a
Uh,
very quiet. I mean, after this weekend of cold and wind and precipitation, frigidity or whatever like that, you're absolutely right, Joe. We're going to be we're going to be edging out of the hole, so to speak. And actually, while it looks like Christmas is going to be a cold one, for our neck of the woods. In fact, for most areas of the country, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day looks to be fairly mild. In fact, maybe even downright warm in some spots. It'll be quite the opposite effect for the next big holiday coming a week after Christmas.
U.S. satellite puzzle pieces are all coming together at the moment. We've got. Whoops, sorry, I wasn't supposed to do that yet. Excuse me. You can already see the energy in the northern plains moving eastward. The leading edge, the bright white clouds through the Dakotas and back into Colorado, that marks really the bitter cold air that is coming eastward. And you get these really dramatic temperature drops that are occurring in 20 and 30 degree temperature drops in 1 hour. Or in the cases we saw earlier in the show, Denver going from 42 to 7 in 1 hour. Clouds gathering around the Great Lakes as well. You're seeing clouds gathering in the southeast. And on the radar, as we give it a quick refresh to get the latest, so here's the precip that's building now in the Carolinas. That's going to be moving northward later tonight and on Thursday and spreading freezing rain and sleet in parts of western Virginia into western North Carolina and even further north in western Maryland, northeastern West Virginia, and into parts of central Pennsylvania with the cold air trap. The radars are quiet in the Northeast except for a little bit of precip up in Maine. And then we go back to the northern plains and to the western Great Lakes. And we're beginning to see here snow. And by the way, because we don't usually we see these in the east more, probably they happen as much in the west, but we just don't notice them. But I've been seeing this for the last number of hours, Joe. The leading edge of that cold air, that red box, is a snow squall warning, and there have been a few snow squall warnings that have been put up by various local weather service offices as that Arctic front moves on eastward.
Yeah, snow squall warnings have been something. I mean, the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, here in New York, I think it was last year in January and again in December, people's phones were buzzing and ringing for a snow squall warning, and I don't think we had seen one of those in a very, very long time. But they're becoming more a part of the general warnings now for this type of a setup. I mean, you had this, let's say, 15 years ago or 10 years ago. They might have just have said a few heavy snow showers and left it there. Now we're actually getting warnings for possible snow
Well, you
squall
know what?
activity.
Sometimes with these lines of snow squalls are like lines of thunderstorms in the summertime, and I forgot when it was. It was sometime in the last 3 or 4 years. I remember that we had a snow squall warning for squalls that came through Long Island, and it was vicious. I mean, just not just the fact that you had snow with zero visibility for about 10 or 15 minutes, but they actually had areas that had wind damage from the line
Yes,
as it went through. Very impressive. They can be very impressive.
indeed, indeed. I saw the on my Facebook page a couple of videos of the snow squall that moved through New York City. Very dramatic. I mean, you actually saw the squall coming in from the Hudson River and enveloping and engulfing the New York City skyscrapers. But that's how these things go sometimes. And well, who knows? Maybe we'll see one again on Friday afternoon. I don't know. we'll hopefully have a better handle on that tomorrow.
All right, why don't we just look at, let me see if I can, this will behave. The digital weather from the Weather Service sometimes works well, and other times it takes a while for the maps to load, or a map might only load in sections. But as long as I see that asterisk spinning on the upper right, I know it's downloading the information. So I'm going to try to get the snowfall forecast up on the digital map. And oh, okay, it's trying. Hasn't gotten nope. It's not going to load all the numbers in. So I'm going to have to cheat a little bit. Let's see if it'll do it this way. I'll move it to a time frame a little bit earlier, an ending time frame a little bit earlier. Sometimes that works. And come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Okay. All right. Well, I moved it and it happened. All right. So let's look at what's going on here. Again, some of the numbers that you're seeing in the Northeast, most of those are going to come afterward, and because of where the low is, you're really not going to be looking at very much. Mostly a coating to a few inches, and that extends down into the Mid-Atlantic, into the Ohio Valley, and even some ones down close to me here in Northeast Georgia, the southern flank. And the map's having a tough time really loading tonight. The northern flank gets down into northern Georgia, northern Alabama, with a coating to an inch, even an inch in Nashville being uh, forecast there. See, now it took all the colors off. It, you know, I usually try to prep this map earlier, and because we were doing a bunch of other things, using this tool, I went away from it. Now it's got to load them down all over again. All right, you know what? I'm not going to waste everybody's time. Let's just go to the probability maps and from WPC, because these will work. And let's use the probability of at least 4. And here we have in the red is 95 to 100%. The blue, I always like to use the dark blue 50% line, and use that as we'll use that as the 4-inch line. So it's highly likely if you are inside that dark blue line area, you're going to get at least 4. And that includes Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, uh, uh, any of the cities that are running across the Great Lakes, major and minor cities that are running across the Great Lakes and in through western New York. If we put up the probability of at least 12, you're going to narrow it down to north central New York, southwestern New York, and along the lakefronts of northwest PA and northeast Ohio, the western part of the state of Michigan along Lake Michigan, and the upper peninsula of Michigan along Lake Superior, getting clobbered with a foot plus. And actually, even across, let's look on the Canadian side, Joe, in a lot of Ontario province around Toronto, northeastward toward Montreal. I mean, it looks like they're all going to have a good shot at getting about a foot of snow in those areas in Canada.
Well, if you want snow, go across the border and go up to our friends in Canuckville, and that's where you'll get your white Christmas this year, unless you don't want to go to Buffalo.
Yeah, back to the 2-inch probabilities as we look in the west, and you see a small area there in northwestern Colorado, areas of 2-inch snows possible, or at least 2-inch snows possible in northern Idaho, and a good portion of the state of Washington, except the areas near the coast. And of course, the probabilities go down as you go further south and further to the west. And as far as the long range is concerned, there's not much going on after this. Oftentimes when you have big storms like this, the atmosphere's got nothing left, and it needs time to recharge and rebuild.
Recycle, yeah.
So when you have a storm of this magnitude, that when you look at it in terms of its circulation and how much geography it covers and the kind of impacts that it's having, a very big atmospheric headache is being relieved. And it takes a while for that to, all that energy getting spent brings you a period of calm weather. And I think that's what's happening for next week. The atmosphere is just doing a big A big sigh. A big sigh. So let's run back. We'll get the GFS up. Let's run back on the models to just take a look. And if you know what, I'm going to use the whole U.S. Got people looking at all over the country because who's flying where, who's flying in from where, and you want to see what the weather is. So here we are for tonight. This is tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Snow from the upper peninsula of Michigan southwestward into Kansas and back over into northern Colorado. You see the big high that's up in Montana. That's a 1060, 60, 62, 64, 66. It's like a 67 or a 68 millibar high up there that's coming down. Meanwhile, there's actually a low that forms along the North Carolina coast tomorrow morning that gets all this rain going and the freezing rain and sleet and snow up into Pennsylvania. So that goes up and out. And you see the big area of rain moving all the way up into northern New England. The backside swings around. The Arctic front swings around. The low moves from the low forms somewhere in Indiana, goes into Ohio, then eventually finds its way up just northeast of Lake Erie, and then does this northwest, almost counterclockwise, quick counterclockwise loop, and just sits up there in southern Canada as we move into Friday night and Saturday. And again, look at the isobars, how tight they are all the way back. You got to go almost to find any areas where there's not much wind. You would have to go probably near that high center in North Dakota, anywhere from there in that narrow band down into Texas. That's where the winds finally drop off and become reasonable.
Right.
It's going to be very unreasonable wind-wise in much of the eastern part of the U.S. right through Saturday and into Saturday night. You see the lake effect happening going into Christmas Day, but the core of the cold air actually comes through Saturday night and then starts to move out on Sunday out of the east. And then we go into next week where, yeah, we have a system coming into the Pacific Northwest, but the high settles into the eastern part of the United States, and got a system there that moves across southern Canada that doesn't really do very much. You got a system off the Florida coast that moves well offshore and doesn't do very much. So if you want to believe this, Joe, after this storm, you're going to have to wait probably until, well, this is New Year's weekend with a high offshore and a west-southwest wind. We're going to warm up nicely for New Year's weekend if this is correct, and may have to wait until, oh, I don't know, January 2nd to get into some rain, or late maybe New Year's Day into January 2nd to get some rain with another cold front coming through.
I'm still waiting for the big, if not a blizzard, the big snowstorm that hits New York right on New Year's Eve night, and seeing whether or not that would preclude the tremendous crowds that build in Times Square to watch the ball drop, if that would cause a lot of people just to simply stay home. Now, there was one year, 1970, New Year's Eve, 1970, where an impending big snowstorm was on the way, but it did not start snowing until after the ball dropped. I remember the next morning I looked outside, and there was about 6 or 7 inches of snow in front of my house. So that came a little bit too late. And there was a storm, I remember it was on a Saturday, and it was December the 30th, and it was about 10 inches of snow that fell. But again, that was the day before New Year's Eve. It has never, at least in my memory and in my lifetime, and I've been out here since the mid and late 50s, but I cannot remember a major snowfall actually coinciding with New Year's Eve night. It has always seemed to miss. I mean, I could remember Christmas Eves where we've had significant snows and snowfalls, but not New Year's Eve. That for whatever reason,
we've had brutally cold New Year's Eves, but
yeah.
In fact, I forgot when it was. Going back, I don't know how many years ago, we had a race to whether the temperature was going to get down to zero before the ball dropped. But I don't remember what year it was.
That was 19. That was 19. That was 2017. And I remember that.
I worked that night at Pix, if I remember correctly.
Well, I worked that morning at FiOS News, and it was exciting for me because that was my one and only time that I was on the big scoreboard giving the forecast on on the Jumbotron. And if I remember, somebody took a picture of that for me, which I was very appreciative of. But it was so cold that, and the Giants were having such a lousy season that I think MetLife Stadium was only about half filled at that time. That was New Year's Eve 2017. Very, very, very cold. One of the coldest in our lifetime, but no snow, just cold.
Now, I've been trying to follow the antics of the polar vortex in the stratosphere, and we talked about this yesterday. Whenever you see it getting wrapped up like a tight little ball, that's when all the cold air gets pulled back up into Canada, and that actually is what's happening next week. The polar vortex in the stratosphere is getting wrapped up like a tight little ball, which means all the cold air is going to be up way to the north, and the weather across the United States is pretty quiet. And you can have winters that are like this, where the polar vortex is locked up in Canada for much of the time. However, it's a temporary thing, and it actually starts stretching again in the longer range to where it's got this long stretch, Joe, from the vortex, which is sitting somewhere between the North Pole and Siberia, but it's stretched all the way down across Greenland, across New England, down into the Tennessee Valley. There's this if you want to draw it, there's a long trough here that goes all the way down. And this is the date on this, on the last day, is January 6th. So if you want to believe this, if this winds up verifying, I would say, I've had some luck making some decent long range forecast guesses by just looking at how the polar vortex behaves. I would say that the warmish pattern that we're going to start seeing develop next week will probably last until maybe the 4th or 5th or 6th of January, and then after that we'll maybe get into another stretch of a colder pattern. Maybe we'll revert back to what we had. I don't know if we're going to get the blocking back in the way we had it, because we had a split in the polar vortex back in late November, and that signaled that we were going to go into a blocking pattern, which we did. We're not seeing a split this time around, but I'm going to say this for snow lovers: if it didn't work for you with having the blocking pattern, let's see what happens without it. You might actually wind up with better luck not having the blocking pattern than what you had this time around.
Well, too much of a good thing with too much of a block could get snow lovers very upset. But yeah, you might be right, Joe. Maybe we don't need to have as strong a block or as any significant block at all, and we'll see what the story is for that. And again, this is presumably after that warming trend that we're going to have, that moderation later on next week into the first week of January, and then after that, all bets are off.
So I'm seeing 135 likes on the chat board, which is great. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button tonight. And Howard A. Hitting super chat, saying happy holidays, Joe and Joe. Appreciate all the detailed weather information you both provide throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any. I don't.
Robert Russo.
Oh, I don't see Robert Russo on here. So Robert Russo hitting super chat. Yes. Also, thank you, Robert. Most appreciated as always. Thank you very much. So, look, none of us knows where it's going to go from here. So, I don't know why I get so wrapped up and so wound up when I read people on various weather boards or weather on social media or whatever, who've already proclaimed they already have the whole winter figured out. I don't know. I just can't. I as a snow lover, I could not function that way. And now it's worse. You know what, Joey? Now it's worse because they're putting absolute certitude to it, long range certitude, where they're saying that, saying things like it'll never snow again on the I-95 corridor. It will never snow again, never. Okay. Oh, but I can tell you what, it will snow in northern Georgia because I'm here. but it'll
Yeah.
never snow again in the I-95 corridor. I mean, come on.
And you actually lost power today, right?
Yeah,
For a
I did. I don't know
little bit?
why. It was a local outage, just a handful of homes, and I just happened to be one of those homes. It was out for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then it came right back. But it wasn't weather related, so something else must have happened. Maybe, maybe a squirrel chewed through a power line, or um, I don't know. There's the bear aren't the problem this time of year. It's too cold for them. They go hide in places. I don't think the bears that are down here, the bears that are down here hibernate. I don't believe they do. But they stay. They don't roam the way they do in the spring and summer, where they come into my garbage pail and take the whole garbage bag and take it into the woods.
According to Jason Schaefer, he says this is proof that Cioffi needs to come home.
Why?
Maybe he feels that you're not built for
Oh, I'm fine.
the rural location that you're located
Oh
in.
no, it's wonderful here. It's these rural Joe. It's like a totally stress-free existence. Well,
Yes.
almost totally stress-free. There is that four-way stop sign in town where sometimes there's a car in front of me and I have to wait. Okay, I mean that could be stressful. It's, you know, driven in New York traffic, you want everybody to just move.
People
Um,
are asking. People are asking on the chat board. Lindy Lou, for example, what does it say on my T-shirt again? So I'm just going to simply say again. There you go. Let me pull this up. Maybe you could see it a little bit better. No, it's good right there. It's the season to be freezing with Frosty the Snowman. With Jackie, I could still hear Jackie Vernon's voice. Happy birthday! Anyway, the best line in that show, by the way, that annual Christmas special, is when Frosty says to Karen, the little girl, "You going to come to the North Pole with me, Karen? I'm sure my mother won't mind, as long as I'm back by supper."
yeah. Oh, good Lord. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
I don't think so, but I mean, now we've talked up this for the last couple of days, and then hopefully tomorrow we'll have a more definitive idea. Well, of course, we better have a definitive idea because it's less than 24 hours until the event.
Yeah.
So hopefully by tomorrow we will know what
I mean,
exactly is
yeah,
going to happen.
we really have been talking about this. It basically became a certainty uh, 6 days ago. Uh,
Well,
so
5 6 days ago, it looked like we were going to have a coastal system that was going to be energized
yeah,
by
but
this
yeah, but
shot of cold
but
air.
by
But
by Saturday, I mean, we were on Sunday. We already had this locked
yeah,
as a major storm going to the lakes. So I
right.
mean, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's 4 days now. We've been just on this one storm, and it just basically dominates the whole weather picture anyway. There's no other storms to talk about. I know there's a category. Johnny Quest told me there's a category 4 hurricane typhoon in the Pacific. I just did not have time to look at it because sometimes those typhoons in the Pacific, if they recurve east of Japan, uh, can potentially be pattern changers across North America, usually switching it over to a cold pattern in the eastern part of the United States. But I didn't get a chance to really look at what was going on in the Pacific there, and I don't just want to do it off the cuff tonight because my head's not into it. There's too much else happening. But I'll take a look when I get a chance, and maybe I'll say something about it tomorrow.
All right. Well, until then, I guess we can bid everybody a fond adieu, and hopefully everything will be happening tomorrow to add a little bit of clarity to the situation. And maybe by this time tomorrow, Joe, we'll be able to actually tell people some specific times, and whether or not we are looking at maybe some rain changing to snow here in the tri-state area, and a whole bunch of other things.
Michael Azara says in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the temperature fell from 43, Joe, to 3 in 30 minutes. They lost 40 degrees in 30 minutes.
Wow.
So that's what? 40 degrees divided by 30, that's a degree and and change every minute. That must feel insane. I mean, physically, that must just feel insane to go from a temperature drop like that.
Crazy.
I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to describe it. I've never experienced anything like that. That is really
You're losing it.
really crazy.
You're losing a degree every 45 seconds.
Yeah. And Nikki Milam says, give Mississippi some hope. And I'm thinking because you're talking about snow. The northern part of the state might get some, maybe enough to whiten the ground in spots, or perhaps a little bit more, but not much more. This is one of the things that changed too, is the fact that when the models were trying to figure out how this was going to play out, and the block was trying to suppress everything to the south, that we took the low so far south that I actually brought overrunning snow across the northern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and it would have, in some case, some of the runs were giving 6, 7, 8 inches. Obviously, that's not going to happen because now it's just basically it just basically wound up being reduced to a really strong Arctic front. You just get a sharp line of rain and snow rain and then snow showers, and then you're done. So, Janet Dunn on the board tonight. Any chance flood watches get posted for Northeast New Jersey too? I'm surprised that they didn't. Yeah, they do such strange things sometimes, Janet. I don't know why I mean, Northeast Jersey counties is under the Upton Weather Service on Long Island. That's their responsibility. Mount Holly has everything else. Yeah, I don't know why. I guess New York has the reasons why they left. The New York office has their reasons to why they left the northeastern New Jersey counties out of the flood watch. Maybe they're going to put them up in the morning, but I don't know. I'm just a little bit surprised. It can't be a question of snow cover because there isn't really any snow cover of any kind. So it can't be that. But then they would have flash flood watches instead of the standard flood watch. Why don't we wait till tomorrow morning, and maybe New York will join the party, and put the New York office will join the party, and put those northeastern New Jersey counties under a flood watch there. All right, yeah, we'll wrap it up. Everybody's
Hold it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can. Let's see. We in this final minute, we're at 166 on the likes, so we're only 34 away.
I have a glass of wine, Joe, and a cigar waiting for me. So let's only give it a minute, okay? So
right.
We need 35 likes to get 34. To 200. 34?
34. If you haven't hit the button yet, hit that button. Let's get to 200 for the second consecutive night.
Yes.
And they're listening, Joe. It's up to 172, 177. It's going up, Joe. It's doing the exact opposite to the temperatures in Colorado and in North Dakota.
One like for every degree the temperature drops is basically what you're saying.
Exactly. 179, 183. All right. 30 seconds left, folks. 30 seconds. 185. Come on. Remember Rawhide? Rolling. Come on. 188. Oh, come on. We're just 12 away now. Come on. Let's get up to 200.
While we're waiting, Telly on the chat board says Joe Cioffi smokes with a question mark. I do occasionally smoke premium cigars. I do not smoke cannabis cigars. Okay, I'm not into cannabis. Is not my thing. I guess maybe if cannabis was my thing, then the likes would be going up, to like 1,000. But it's not. It's not my thing. 199. 199.
We got to 200, and then we dropped back to 199.
No, now we're down to 197. But
going down.
But Brandon Doherty just hit super chat. Thank you, Brandon. Most appreciated.
All right.
I guess somebody decided when we got to there is 200. I saw 200. We're happy. Okay. Tomorrow night 7:35. Friday night 7:35. Off Saturday. Off Sunday. Off Monday, and then back again next Tuesday. Okay. 99.
Thank you.
And thank you.
There you go.